When you think of Egypt, what comes to mind? It's probably pyramids, pharaohs, all that iconic stuff. But that's really just the opening act of an incredible 5,000-year saga. We're talking empires, new religions, massive revolutions. So let's dive into the full, epic story of one of the world's oldest and most fascinating civilizations. Right, these structures, they're probably the most famous symbols of Egypt, period. But here's something that'll blow your mind. When Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, was in power, these pyramids were already more ancient to her than she is to us today. It just shows you this is only one chapter, the Old Kingdom, in a history that is way, way longer and more complex than most of us ever realize. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. We're talking about the foundational era of ancient Egypt. This is the age of the pharaohs, a time when this unique and powerful culture, totally shaped by the Nile River, created an identity that would literally echo for thousands of years. 3,000 years. Just let that number sink in. That is the staggering length of time that pharaohs ruled Egypt. I mean, to put that into perspective, the entire Roman Empire lasted for about 500 years. This wasn't just a kingdom, it was an institution of almost unimaginable longevity, built on the predictable rhythm of the Nile and a powerful, unifying vision of the divine. And you know what's so cool? We can actually pinpoint the very beginning of this whole era to an event that was recorded on this artifact right here, the Narmer Palette. It shows King Narmer uniting the two lands, that's Upper and Lower Egypt, into one single kingdom, way back around 3150 BC. That act right there marks the birth of the first dynasty and the dawn of a unified Egypt. So this huge 3,000-year period is usually broken down into three main peaks of power. You've got the Old Kingdom, which was the great age of pyramid building. Then comes the Middle Kingdom, which saw this big comeback of culture and stability after some chaos. And finally, the New Kingdom. That was the age of empire, when pharaohs like King Tut and Ramesses the Great pushed Egypt's borders further than ever before. But you know how it goes. No kingdom, no matter how powerful, lasts forever. After 3 millennia, Egypt's power started to fade, and its amazing location and incredible wealth made it a prize that all the rising superpowers of the ancient world wanted, kicking off a brand new era of foreign rule. The list of who conquered Egypt reads like a who's who of ancient empires. First, the Persians swept in. Then, Alexander the Great shows up, and his Greek successors start the Ptolemaic kingdom. And finally, after the very dramatic end of Cleopatra, Egypt gets absorbed into the mighty Roman Empire. For the first time in millennia, its age of independence was completely over. This one visual contrast really tells the whole story. On one side, you have King Narmer, the symbol of a powerful, independent Egypt. On the other side, that's an Egyptian soldier, but he's not fighting for a pharaoh anymore. He's serving in the army of the Persian Empire. Egypt was no longer its own master. Now, the Greek rulers, the Ptolemies, they were clever. To get the people to accept them, they basically adopted all the Egyptian customs. So here you can see the famous Cleopatra, a Greek queen, depicted just like a traditional Egyptian pharaoh. But her reign was the end of the line, as her defeat by Rome kicked off the next long chapter of foreign rule. Under the Romans, Egypt's importance didn't go away. Its role just totally changed. It became the personal breadbasket of the emperor, meaning its grain harvest fed the massive population of Rome. And at the same time, its capital, Alexandria, just exploded as a global hub for trade and a beacon of learning, home to brilliant minds who are pushing the boundaries of science. So, after all these political shifts, huge spiritual changes were coming. The Roman era saw a new faith arrive that would take incredibly deep root in Egypt, only to be followed centuries later by another, which would, once again, completely transform the country's identity. You can literally see that transformation right here in these two Cairo landmarks. On the left, you've got the ancient Hanging Church, a symbol of Egypt's incredibly powerful early Christian community. And on the right, the Al-Azhar Mosque, a major center of Islamic learning founded after the Arab conquest. Together, they tell the story of Egypt's spiritual journey. And what's really crucial here is that Christianity in Egypt developed its own unique character. The Coptic Church, which was established long before many European churches, became this distinct expression of Egyptian Christianity. It's a faith and an identity that has survived through centuries of change and is still a vital part of the mission today. Then, in the 7th century, everything changes again. The Arab conquest arrives. And this didn't just bring Sunni Islam, it also brought the Arabic language. Over the centuries, both became dominant, fundamentally reshaping Egypt's entire cultural landscape. The old Coptic language slowly faded from daily use, and Islam became the faith of the vast majority. Okay, so let's hit the fast forward button, jumping through centuries of rule by various Islamic empires all the way to the 19th century. This is where the story of modern Egypt really begins, a story forged in modernization, massive debt, European colonialism, and a powerful hunger for independence. So, how did Britain end up in control? Well, it was a step-by-step process. It all started with an ambitious ruler, Muhammad Ali, who wanted to modernize the country. But these huge projects, especially the Suez Canal, led to crippling debt. To get cash, Egypt sold its stake in the canal to the British. That financial leverage turned into political control, and when Egyptian nationalists resisted, Britain just invaded in 1882 and took over. But the Egyptian people were not about to accept foreign rule sitting down. British control sparked a fierce sense of nationalism. This photo actually shows women protesting during the huge revolution of 1919. This was a nationwide uprising demanding independence. And while it didn't kick the British out completely, it did force London to formally declare Egypt an independent nation in 1922. And that brings us right into the turbulent modern era. The 20th century saw the final end of the monarchy and the birth of the Egyptian Republic, a period defined by charismatic leaders, regional wars, and dramatic internal upheaval. Three men really dominated this period. You had Gamal Abdel Nasser, who defiantly nationalized the Suez Canal and became a hero across the Arab world. His successor, Anwar Sadat, who absolutely stunned the world by making peace with Israel. And finally, Hosni Mubarak, whose nearly 30-year rule brought stability for some, but ended in a massive popular revolution. And this was the climax. Tahrir Square, February 2011, millions of Egyptians from every walk of life had been protesting for 18 straight days, demanding an end to Mubarak's regime. The moment his resignation was announced, well, it was pure euphoria, a moment of incredible hope for a new, democratic future. But that hopeful moment gave way to a really divisive and turbulent time. Egypt held its first ever democratic presidential election, which was won by Mohamed Morsi. His rule, though, proved to be polarizing, and just a year later, he was removed from power by the military, which led to the presidency of the current leader, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. You know, through all of this unbelievable history, through 30 dynasties of pharaohs, through Persian, Greek, and Roman rule, through Christian and Islamic transformation, and through modern revolutions, one thing has remained constant. The Nile, the river that gave birth to this civilization, continues to be its lifeblood, a silent witness to 5,000 years of history. Egypt's story is really one of astonishing endurance. It's been conquered and ruled by outsiders for so much of its history. Yet it has always managed to absorb new influences while holding on to this powerful sense of its own unique identity. So it all leaves us with one ultimate question. After 5,000 years of resilience and reinvention, what is Egypt's next chapter?